Well, today we're speaking with Larry Trunek, the manager of manufacturing systems from MillerCoors. Well, good morning, Larry.
Thank you, Sal.
What we're talking about today is energy efficiency associated with plant operations. And what I wanted to talk about is, does your company have a sustainability initiative or a sustainability strategy in play?
Absolutely. In 2008, our parent company set goals for us to have a 15% energy reduction by the year 2015. That's on a very aggressive schedule, of which all the disciplines within that energy spectrum was involved. So we're looking at the energy reduction of 15% across the corporate board.
So the energy reduction you speak to in terms of 15% would include natural gas, as well as electrical power.
And water.
And water as well. Well, more specifically now, with regard to your electrical energy reduction goals, do you have any specific goals in that arena?
Yeah, it's typical of most companies. When we started out, we looked at the real easy ones. We started looking at lighting and turning off lights, changing lighting to more high efficiency lighting, started to investigate LED fixtures, things like that. But when you look at the overall application of usage of energy within the corporation, lighting only represents about 10% of the utilization. So if we're going to reduce the total usage by 15%, lighting only represents a small portion of it. So we really needed to look at something much bigger that would give us those types of savings.
Could you elaborate a little bit more on how you expect to realize these goals
Sure.
and achieve that next plateau or next wave of energy reduction?
Sure. What we looked at is for that 75% of the process where we're using the energy to actually produce our product, what we wound up looking at is the majority of that energy is utilized for motors, whether it be pumps, conveyors, machinery, standard inductions type motors. And so we looked and said, what are our opportunities there? And we looked at the different technologies. We had already utilized the IE3, the super premium class motors, as dictated by the government. So we're already at that level where the super high efficiency, we're utilizing the high efficiency gearboxes, but we're still not there yet. So we're looking for that next level. And what we did some investigatory work, and what we found was that there is a new opportunity out there for permanent magnet motors. And then we started doing the investigation on permanent magnet motors and how they'd apply primarily to the packaging operation.
The technologies you're talking about here, the new technologies, are permanent magnet motors. And how do you exactly envision, or how do you anticipate applying these permanent magnet motors, and particularly which applications?
Sure. The permanent magnet motors are really a newer technology, but they're not like a standard induction squirrel cage motor that most people are familiar with. They must be used with a variable frequency drive, but because we're in a high-speed packaging operation with light-weighted containers like a lot of the industry utilizes, we're already on variable frequency drive. So the real key here is can we change the prime mover, the motor, and utilize variable frequency drives and get that efficiency. Because we can now swap out the induction motor for permanent magnet AC motors, we're anticipating anywhere between a 5 to 15% energy reduction by simply changing the style of motor, which represents huge savings.
So the initial cost of these permanent magnet motors are obviously much higher than the traditional induction motors. How do you, what business justification analysis have you done to really show that these can be cost justified? Absolutely,
and right now you're absolutely right. The permanent magnet motors today running about 1.5 to 2 times the cost of a equivalent super premium efficiency induction motor. That is a tremendous threshold to get over. If you're running a 3-shift operation at minimum 5 days a week, 365 days a year, or a year, you can get a payback in about 4.5 years. So right now it's a little tough for the payback, but it's long term. And we're taking the strategy of looking and saying, when we buy these assets, we're going to take and have those out there for 15, 20 years. And those assessments, those analysis, the return on investments we're doing is at today's energy prices. If you look at where the escalation of energy costs are in both Europe and in the U.S., I mean, the ROI even becomes shorter interval based upon the energy costs.
Given the fact that you've looked at a relatively short payback of 4 to 5 years, is that correct?
Correct.
Now, have you factored in the commodity prices of some of these rare earth magnets that go into these metals and how that might
We-
affect your projection of the ROI?
We have looked at it, and the development of the rare earth magnets, because most of it is coming out of China, most of those rare earth materials are, China has kind of a market on it, but there is some new development working on rare earth magnets that will be outside of China that will hopefully prosper and make this permanent magnet technology more readily available and hopefully more cost effective.
Oh, excellent. That's an interesting statement. Now, you're based in the U.S., is that correct?
Correct.
So how do you see the adoption of this type of technology is in the U.S.? How, does it lag, or is it actually ahead of the curve compared to the rest of the world?
It's interesting. The U.S. was probably the first country to adopt the IE3 motor standard for energy efficiency. We adopted it in law, said all motors over 1 horsepower had to meet this efficiency standard. And the industry as a whole in the U.S. has adopted it. Europe was actually lagging behind that illegal adoption of those standards. But because Europe's prices are so much higher, they have gone beyond the IE3 and they now have adopted the IE4 standard, which is part of the permanent magnet field of motors availability. And so because of their paying almost 1.5 to 2 times the energy cost that we are, we're seeing a much more rapid deployment and adoption in Europe. As a matter of fact, most of the permanent magnet motor manufacturers for the small horsepower, I'm going to talk 5 horsepower and less, are out of Europe right now. Mm-hmm. The U.S. industry is just starting to make some of those motors available, and some of the major motor manufacturers are doing research looking to come out with those type of motors in 2012 or shortly thereafter. So right now the U.S. is lagging behind.
Well, thank you very much, Larry. It's been a pleasure talking to you about the latest trends in energy efficiency and some of the latest technologies in permanent magnet motor that are being applied in the industry.
My pleasure, Sal. Thank you.
I've been speaking with Larry Trunek, Manager of Manufacturing Systems at the MillerCoors Company, about energy efficiency. Thank you.